This cat caused an extinction. No, seriously. In just 1 year, an entire species vanished forever. No recordings of its song, no detailed observations of its behavior, only a few dried skins in museums and scattered written accounts remain. This is the story of how one man's pet became one of the most infamous examples of extinction in modern history. But here's the thing, this isn't just a story from the past, it's still happening today, all over the world in ways you wouldn't expect. And the real problem? Most people have no idea it's even happening. House cats. We see them as pets, companions, sometimes even members of the family. But for all their charm, cats are also one of the deadliest invasive species on the planet. The domestic cat descends from the Near Eastern wildcat, a small, solitary predator native to the Middle East and North Africa. Unlike dogs, bred by humans for specific traits, cats domesticated themselves. When early human civilizations in Mesopotamia and Egypt began storing grain, they inadvertently created a paradise for rodents. Wildcats were drawn to these settlements, hunting the mice and rats that fed on surplus crops. Some wildcats tolerated human presence better than others, and over time a mutual relationship formed. Humans benefited from the natural pest control, while the cats gained a reliable food source. Thousands of years of domestication barely changed them. They became smaller, their coats more colorful, but at their core, they remained hunters, solitary, independent, and lethal. When these adaptable predators are introduced to ecosystems where wildlife has no natural defenses against them, the results can be catastrophic. According to the journal Nature Communications, free-ranging domestic cats in the US kill an estimated 1.3 to 4 billion birds and 6.3 to 22 billion small mammals each year. Many of these are native species, wiped out by an animal that humans introduced. In Australia, where wildlife evolved with no natural defenses against cats, the destruction has been even worse. Since their introduction by European settlers, cats have wiped out at least 22 mammal species, including the desert bandicoot and the lesser bilby. The problem has grown so dire that the Australian government has resorted to mass cullings, even airdropping poisoned sausages into the outback. But the most extreme devastation occurs on islands. Islands are home to some of the world's most unique and fragile ecosystems. With limited land area and no exposure to large mammalian predators, many island species evolved in ways that made them exceptionally vulnerable. Many bird species nest on the ground, lack strong flight abilities, or are simply too trusting to recognize a stalking feline as a threat. When cats arrive, extinction can happen frighteningly fast. The story of Tibbles is one of the most infamous examples. Stevens Island, a remote windswept landmass off the northern tip of New Zealand's South Island, was once untouched by humans. Just a few square miles in size, it was rugged, steep, and battered by the elements, but it harbored something remarkable. Like the rest of New Zealand, Stevens Island had been isolated for over 80 million years, creating a lost world where evolution took a unique course. New Zealand became a land of birds, many of which lost the ability to fly. With no mammals to fear, they filled every ecological niche. Some scurried like rodents, others like the giant moa filled the role of large herbivores, until the massive host eagle hunted them from above. But isolation is a double-edged sword. The same forces that allowed these species to thrive also left them incredibly vulnerable. When humans finally arrived, they found a land where the wildlife had never learned to fear them. The Maori were the first to settle the islands around 13 AD, bringing dogs and Polynesian rats with them. They hunted the moa to extinction within just a few hundred years, and rats preyed on eggs and chicks of smaller bird species. Even then, the ecosystem had not yet faced its worst threat. The real destruction came with European colonization. Deforestation, agriculture, and introduction of new predators, stoats, weasels, shiprats, and most notably cats, pushed many of the species past the breaking point. By the late 19th century, nearly a third of New Zealand's bird species had disappeared. The Haast's eagle was gone, so was the huia, a songbird revered by the Maori. Species that had once thrived for millennia were vanishing in a matter of decades. But on remote islands like Stevens Island, a few remnants of the old world remained. In 1894, a lighthouse was built on the island to protect ships from its treacherous waters. But it also brought a small group of keepers, including David Lyall, an experienced naturalist and explorer. With Lyall came an unassuming pet, Tibbles the cat. But Tibbles was not alone. She was pregnant. Within months, Stevens Island, one of the last strongholds of New Zealand's prehistoric bird life, would become the site of one of the fastest extinctions ever recorded. No one knows when Tibbles made her first kill, but it became apparent shortly after David Lyall settled there that she had developed a dangerous habit of bringing him small birds, sometimes whole, sometimes half-eaten. At first, he wasn't alarmed. Cats hunt birds, it's what they do. But when he examined one of the carcasses, something stood out. The bird was small, olive green with scalloped brown feathers, a pale breast, and a long curved bill. Most striking were its wings, far too small to support flight. Lyall, an avid ornithologist familiar with New Zealand's bird life, immediately sensed this was no ordinary species. His mind raced as he pieced together the clues. It resembled the rifleman, one of New Zealand's smallest birds, but with a key difference: this one couldn't fly. This trait was almost unheard of for a bird so small. Flightlessness is an adaptation seen in birds isolated from predators, and Lyall realized he may have stumbled upon something extraordinary. Lyall's excitement grew as he examined the specimen further. Just 3.5 inches long, it had strong legs built for running and appeared suited for a life on the forest floor. A survival strategy that once kept it safe until the arrival of non-native predators. Determined to identify the species, Lyall sent specimens to leading ornithologists including Walter Rothschild and Walter Buehler. Meanwhile, Tibbles continued her deadly work, delivering at least 15 more birds with the same distinctive features. The verdict was clear: this was an entirely new species, named Traversia lyalli, commonly known as the Lyall's wren. It was one of the only known flightless passerines or songbirds in the world, a hidden gem of New Zealand's biodiversity. Fossil evidence suggests that it may have once been widespread across New Zealand, but as new predators arrived, it retreated to the last place it could survive. On islands without predators, flight becomes optional. Birds evolve to run, climb, or in this case, hide. Lyall knew that New Zealand's isolated ecosystems had produced a number of such species, like the famous kiwi and the now extinct moa, but this bird was different. It was smaller, more delicate, and completely unique. By the time scientists officially recognized the Lyall's wren, it was already too late. Tibbles had done what cats do best, and now she wasn't hunting alone. Soon, her kittens, now fully grown, had turned wild. They joined in her deadly work, and their numbers began to grow exponentially. As the cat population expanded, so too did the carnage. What had started as a few isolated killings soon became a relentless assault on the island's fragile ecosystem. The Lyall's wren had no defense, no way to escape. It had never faced a predator like this before. The bird's only means of survival had been to hide among the rocks and thick vegetation, relying on camouflage to avoid predators. But against a cat, fast, agile, and highly skilled at hunting, it was no match. The wren's flightlessness and timid nature made it especially vulnerable. What was once a thriving species now faced a rapid annihilation of its population. By March 1895, just 1 year after Lyall's discovery, newspapers were already reporting the bird's extinction. The tragedy unfolded swiftly, almost too quickly for anybody to comprehend. An editorial in the press captured the sense of loss and disbelief. There is very good reason to believe that the bird is no longer to be found on the island, and, as it is not known to exist anywhere else, it has apparently become quite extinct. This is probably a record performance in the way of extermination. A record that still stands to this day. In a cruel twist of fate, a species that had once been native to a wide expanse of New Zealand was wiped out within mere months of its discovery, its entire existence erased by the actions of a single cat and the generations that followed. Once the extent of the damage became clear and the island's bird populations were being devastated, efforts were made to cull the feral cat population. In fact, it wasn't just birds at risk. By the early 1900s, it was discovered that the cats were also decimating a native lizard species, the tuatara. In response, authorities placed a bounty on cats, offering a payment for each one killed. In 1899, a new lighthouse keeper, aware of the catastrophic impact, took matters into his own hands and reportedly shot over 100 cats in a mere 10 months. But the process was slow and difficult. The cats were resilient, and the island's remote location made it hard to ensure a complete eradication. It wasn't until 1925, more than 3 decades later, that Stevens Island was finally declared cat-free. But by that time, it was far too late. The Lyall's wren, along with other species, had been lost forever. The damage to the ecosystem was irreversible, and the extinction of the Lyall's wren remains a powerful example of how a single introduced predator can cause irreversible harm to an ecosystem that has existed in delicate balance for centuries. While the cats were the ones hunting the wren to extinction, the true responsibility falls on David Lyall and other naturalists who failed to control their spread. Whether through oversight or inaction, their negligence allowed a preventable ecological disaster to unfold. The Lyall's wren is gone, and it's not alone. Cats have been responsible for at least 63 extinctions, including birds, mammals, and reptiles. And despite our understanding of the damage they cause, they continue to be released into fragile ecosystems, either as pets, feral populations, or misguided conservation efforts. The solution isn't simple. Managing feral cats is hard. Even suggesting that pet cats stay indoors sparks controversy. But the reality is clear. Cats are natural-born killers, and in the wrong environments they can and will wipe out an entire species. If we can learn from this extinction, maybe we can stop history from repeating itself. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you think we can minimize the environmental damage while still caring for our curious feline friends? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, you should check out this one on the invasive gypsy moth. Thanks for watching.